For centuries, songs have told stories about love, heartbreak, and hope. But some of the most powerful songs ever written dared to explore something much bigger: judgment, heaven, hell, the eternal questions that have fascinated humanity for thousands of years. What happens when this life ends? Is there justice beyond the grave? Can redemption overcome our mistakes? Whether inspired by scripture, personal faith, or spiritual imagination, these songs challenged listeners to think beyond everyday life and confront the mysteries waiting on the other side. Some were warnings, some were prayers, and some were triumphant declarations of victory over darkness itself. Tonight, we're looking back at 9 classic songs about judgment, heaven, and hell. Number 9, Stryper, To Hell with the Devil, 1986. By the mid-1980s, heavy metal was often associated with rebellion, darkness, and controversy. Many bands embraced shocking imagery, occult symbolism, and themes designed to provoke audiences. Then along came Stryper, and they did something almost unthinkable. They brought openly Christian messages into the world of heavy metal. For many listeners, it seemed like a contradiction. Heavy guitars and biblical faith were not supposed to belong together, yet Stryper built an entire career proving otherwise. And nowhere was that mission more evident than in To Hell with the Devil. Released in 1986, the song exploded with everything fans expected from classic metal: soaring vocals, blazing guitar solos, and arena-sized energy. But unlike many of their contemporaries, Stryper's message was unmistakably spiritual. The title itself was provocative. At first glance, many people assumed it was anti-religious or controversial in the same way as other metal songs of the era. In reality, the exact opposite was true. To Hell with the Devil was a declaration of spiritual resistance, a refusal to surrender to evil, a celebration of the victory of good over darkness. Throughout the song, the battle between heaven and hell is presented not merely as an abstract theological idea, but as a real struggle taking place within everyday life. Temptation, fear, and spiritual deception are portrayed as forces that must be confronted and overcome. And unlike songs that dwell on despair, Stryper's message is ultimately one of hope. The devil does not win. Darkness does not have the final word. Faith does. For Christian listeners in the 1980s, the song offered something rare: a faith-based message delivered with the same power and excitement as mainstream rock and metal. For others, it served as a reminder that spiritual themes could exist far beyond church walls. Nearly 4 decades later, To Hell with the Devil remains one of the most iconic Christian rock songs ever recorded. Because beneath the screaming guitars and arena rock spectacle was a timeless message that no matter how strong darkness may seem, good is still worth fighting for. Number 8, Ray LaMontagne, Trouble, 2004. Some songs about judgment don't sound like sermons. They sound like confessions. And few songs capture that feeling more powerfully than Ray LaMontagne's Trouble. Released in 2004, the song immediately stood out because of its raw honesty. LaMontagne's weathered voice sounded less like a performer entertaining an audience, and more like a man speaking directly from the depths of his soul. The music itself was simple, a gentle blend of folk, blues, and Americana. No grand production, no dramatic effects, just a haunting melody carrying the weight of personal struggle. At first glance, Trouble appears to be about hardship and regret. But beneath the surface lies something much deeper, a spiritual reckoning between a man and his own conscience. Throughout the song, the narrator seems painfully aware of his flaws, mistakes, and inner battles. He speaks as someone who has spent years wrestling with personal demons and now finds himself staring into an uncertain future. And hanging over the entire song is the shadow of judgment, not necessarily judgment from other people, but judgment from something higher, something eternal. The lyrics carry the feeling of a person who knows he cannot outrun the consequences of his actions forever. There is a longing for redemption woven through every verse, a hope that despite his failures, mercy may still be possible. That emotional tension gives the song its remarkable power. It's not a song of certainty, it's a song of searching.
She won't let me go.
Of a weary soul trying to find peace before the final accounting arrives. Perhaps that's why Trouble resonated so deeply with listeners, because most people understand that feeling, the desire to make peace with the past, the hope for forgiveness, the fear of being judged for who we've been. Even today, Trouble remains one of the most moving modern songs about redemption and spiritual accountability. Not because it offers easy answers, but because it honestly confronts one of humanity's oldest fears, the question of whether grace can still be found after we've made our mistakes. Number 7. The Rolling Stones, Sympathy for the Devil, 1968.
I'm made well to chase.
Few songs in rock history have been misunderstood, debated, and analyzed more than Sympathy for the Devil. From the moment listeners hear its hypnotic rhythm, eerie atmosphere, and unforgettable opening line, "Please allow me to introduce myself," it becomes clear that this is no ordinary rock song. Released in 1968 during one of the most turbulent periods of the 20th century, the track immediately sparked controversy. Many critics accused the Rolling Stones of glorifying evil or promoting Satanism, but the song's true purpose was far more complex. Mick Jagger wrote the lyrics from the perspective of Lucifer himself, not to celebrate him, but to use him as a narrator.
Stuck around St. Petersburg when I saw it.
Throughout the song, the devil calmly guides listeners through some of humanity's darkest moments, claiming to have been present during wars, assassinations, revolutions, and acts of cruelty stretching across history. The effect is unsettling, because as the song unfolds, an uncomfortable truth begins to emerge. The real source of evil isn't supernatural, it's human. Again and again, the lyrics suggest that history's greatest horrors were not created by the devil alone, but by ordinary people willingly participating in violence, hatred, greed, and destruction. In that sense, the song becomes less about Satan and more about judgment. Judgment of humanity itself.
If you meet me, have some courtesy.
The devil serves as a mirror, forcing listeners to confront the darker side of human nature and recognize how easily civilization can descend into chaos when morality is abandoned. That idea gave the song an almost biblical dimension. Many religious traditions teach that evil thrives when people surrender to temptation, pride, and selfishness. Sympathy for the Devil explores that same concept, but through the unusual perspective of evil, itself speaking directly to the audience.
Using you is just the nature of my good.
Perhaps that's why the song remains so powerful decades later. Because beneath the blues rock swagger and unforgettable melody lies a disturbing question. If evil has shaped so much of human history, how much of it can we honestly blame on the devil? And how much belongs to us? In the end, Sympathy for the Devil is not a celebration of darkness. It's a warning. A reminder that the greatest battles between heaven and hell are often fought not in distant realms, but within the human heart itself. Number 6. Johnny Cash, The Man Comes Around, 2002.
Everybody won't be treated all the same.
There are songs about judgment, and then there are songs that sound like judgment itself. Few recordings capture that feeling more powerfully than Johnny Cash's The Man Comes Around. Released late in Cash's life, the song feels less like a typical country track and more like a prophetic vision unfolding before the listener's ears. His voice, worn by age and experience, carries a gravity that few singers could ever replicate. Every word feels earned. Every line feels important. And at the heart of the song lies one of the most dramatic themes in Christian scripture, the Day of Judgment.
At the terror in each sip and in each sup.
Cash drew heavily from the Book of Revelation, the Bible's final and most mysterious book. Filled with vivid imagery of trumpets, horsemen, angels, and divine justice, Revelation has fascinated believers for centuries with its descriptions of the end of time and the ultimate separation between good and evil. Those images appear throughout the song: the righteous and the wicked, the saved and the lost, the final reckoning awaiting all humanity. But what makes The Man Comes Around so compelling is that Cash doesn't present these themes with excitement or spectacle. He presents them with solemn certainty. The song feels like a warning delivered by someone who has spent a lifetime reflecting on faith, sin, redemption, and mortality. And perhaps no artist was better suited for that role.
The wise men will bow down before the throne.
Johnny Cash's own life was marked by struggle, addiction, failure, forgiveness, and spiritual renewal. He understood both human weakness and the hope of redemption. That personal history gives the song extraordinary emotional weight, because beneath the apocalyptic imagery lies a simple truth. One day, every person will have to answer for the life they lived. For some, that idea is comforting.
The wise men will bow down before the throne.
For others, terrifying. But Cash treats it as unavoidable. The man coming around is not merely a character. He represents divine judgment itself. The moment when excuses disappear, truth is revealed, and eternity begins. Even today, The Man Comes Around remains one of the most haunting spiritual songs ever recorded. Not because it predicts the future, but because it forces listeners to confront a question as old as humanity itself. If judgment came today, would we be ready? Number 5. Bob Dylan, Knockin' on Heaven's Door, 1973.
And use it anymore.
Some songs don't need complicated lyrics to leave a lasting impact. Sometimes a few simple lines can say everything. That was the magic of Knockin' on Heaven's Door. Released in 1973 as part of the soundtrack for the film Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, the song quickly became one of Bob Dylan's most beloved and enduring compositions. Unlike many of his densely written songs, this one was remarkably sparse.
Feel I'm knocking on heaven's door.
The lyrics are simple, the melody is gentle, the message feels immediate, and perhaps that's exactly why it became so powerful. At its heart, Knockin' on Heaven's Door is a song about mortality. The narrator appears to be standing at the edge of life itself, feeling his strength fade and recognizing that his earthly journey is nearing its end. There is no panic in the song, no dramatic struggle against death. Instead, there is acceptance, a quiet peace. The image of knocking on heaven's door has become one of the most recognizable spiritual metaphors in popular music. It suggests a soul approaching the threshold between this life and whatever lies beyond. For many listeners, the song feels deeply Christian because of its references to heaven and the afterlife. Yet Dylan intentionally keeps the message universal enough to speak to anyone confronting the mystery of death.
Feel I'm knocking on heaven's door.
And that universality became one of the reasons the song resonated across generations. Whether heard at funerals, memorials, or moments of personal reflection, the track offers something rare: comfort without certainty. It acknowledges the reality of death while refusing to surrender to fear. Perhaps that's why the song continues to move listeners decades later. Because sooner or later, everyone faces the same reality: the end of earthly life, the unknown beyond it.
Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door.
And the hope that something peaceful waits on the other side. Even today, Knockin' on Heaven's Door feels less like a farewell and more like a gentle transition. A final breath, a final prayer, and the quiet sound of a soul preparing to step into eternity. Number 4. Led Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven, 1971.
All that glitters is gold.
Few songs in rock history have inspired as much fascination, interpretation, and debate as Stairway to Heaven. For more than 50 years, listeners have searched its lyrics for hidden meanings, spiritual clues, and philosophical messages. And perhaps that's exactly what Led Zeppelin intended. Released in 1971, the song begins quietly, almost like a medieval folktale. Acoustic guitars drift through the opening verses, while Robert Plant introduces one of the most mysterious characters in classic rock, a lady who's sure all that glitters is gold. At first glance, the song appears to tell a simple story, but as it unfolds, it becomes something far deeper. The woman in the lyrics seems to represent a person who believes wealth, status, and material success can purchase everything she desires, including spiritual fulfillment. Yet throughout the song, subtle warnings begin to emerge. The path she is following may not lead where she thinks. Again and again, the lyrics return to the idea of choice. The choices people make, the values they embrace, the direction they follow through life. And beneath those themes lies a profoundly spiritual question. What truly matters when the journey is over? As the music gradually builds from a gentle folk ballad into a thunderous rock epic, the song begins to feel less like a story and more like a spiritual pilgrimage. There are references to signs, whispers, roads, and destinations. To seekers looking for truth. To souls standing at a crossroads. And ultimately, to the possibility of a final reckoning where outward success means far less than inner wisdom. Unlike traditional religious songs, Stairway to Heaven never offers clear answers. Instead, it invites listeners to reflect on their own path, their own priorities, their own destination. Perhaps that's why the song has endured for generations, because every listener hears something slightly different in it.
And it's whispered that soon.
Some hear a warning against greed, others hear a meditation on spiritual awakening, and many hear a timeless reminder that life is shaped by the choices we make every day. Even now, more than half a century later, Stairway to Heaven remains one of rock music's most powerful explorations of spiritual longing. A song about wealth and wisdom, about illusion and truth, and about the long journey every soul must eventually take toward its final destination. Number 3, AC/DC, Highway to Hell, 1979. If there is one song that perfectly captures the rebellious spirit of rock and roll, it's Highway to Hell. The title alone became legendary. For decades, the song has been associated with loud guitars, wild nights, and a carefree attitude toward life. It became an anthem for generations of rock fans who embraced its defiant energy and unforgettable chorus. But the story behind the song is more nuanced than many people realize. When AC/DC released Highway to Hell in 1979, frontman Bon Scott wasn't actually making a theological statement about eternal damnation. Instead, the song reflected the exhausting reality of life as a touring rock musician. The endless travel, the constant performances, the sleepless nights, the relentless pressure of life on the road. In Scott's eyes, that lifestyle often felt like a highway with no exits, a chaotic journey that was exhilarating, dangerous, and difficult to escape. Yet because of its title and imagery, the song inevitably became linked to larger spiritual themes about heaven, hell, judgment, and the consequences of human choices. And that's part of what makes the song so fascinating in the context of this list. Unlike songs that treat hell as a place of fear or punishment, Highway to Hell approaches it with confidence and even celebration. The narrator isn't worried. He's committed to the path. And that attitude creates an interesting contrast with many religious traditions, which often view life's journey as a choice between two destinations, one leading toward redemption, the other toward destruction. Whether listeners interpret the song literally or metaphorically, it raises a timeless question. What happens when a person knowingly chooses a path they understand may carry consequences? Perhaps that's why the song has remained so powerful for more than 4 decades. Because beneath the hard rock swagger lies an idea as old as human storytelling itself. Every road leads somewhere. And eventually, every traveler reaches the end of the journey. Number 2, Loaf, Bat Out of Hell, 1977. Few songs in rock history are as dramatic, chaotic, and larger than life as Bat Out of Hell. From the moment it begins, the song feels like a movie unfolding through music. Roaring guitars, explosive vocals, relentless energy. Everything about it is excessive in the best possible way, and for many listeners, that's exactly why it became a classic. On the surface, Bat Out of Hell sounds like a thrilling story about rebellion, freedom, and reckless youth. The title itself evokes images of someone racing away from danger with no regard for consequences. But beneath the theatrical rock spectacle lies something much deeper. Written by Jim Steinman, the song is filled with biblical imagery, spiritual symbolism, and themes of judgment woven into a story of desperation and escape. The narrator is trapped by circumstance, by fear, by the limitations of the world around him. And throughout the song, there is a frantic sense of urgency, as if time itself is running out. The phrase "bat out of hell" suggests more than simply moving fast. It suggests fleeing from destruction, escaping a place of suffering before it's too late. As the story unfolds, listeners encounter themes of mortality, risk, sacrifice, and the consequences of human choices. The characters seem to understand that their decisions may ultimately lead to disaster, yet they continue forward anyway. That tension gives the song much of its emotional power. It's not merely a celebration of rebellion, it's a portrait of people desperately trying to outrun fate. And perhaps that's why the song feels so timeless, because beneath the motorcycles, romance, and rock and roll excess lies a universal human struggle, the desire to break free from whatever confines us, to escape our fears, to outrun our mistakes, to find redemption before the road finally runs out. Even today, Bat Out of Hell remains one of rock music's most unforgettable journeys. A wild ride through darkness and desperation, a story about freedom and consequence, and a reminder that every escape carries its own destination. Number 1, Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell, 1980.
Sing me a song, you're a singer.
When people hear the name Black Sabbath, they often think of darkness, heavy riffs, ominous imagery, songs filled with mystery and menace. But one of the band's most profound songs wasn't really about darkness at all. It was about choice. Released in 1980 as the title track of Black Sabbath's first album with vocalist Ronnie James Dio, Heaven and Hell quickly became one of the most respected songs in heavy metal history. Unlike many songs that portray good and evil as simple opposites, this one presents a far more complicated view of human nature.
It's just the beginning.
From the opening lyrics, Dio challenges listeners to look beyond appearances. The song suggests that heaven and hell are not merely distant places waiting for us after death. They are realities we help create through the decisions we make every day. Again and again, the lyrics explore the tension between light and darkness, wisdom and temptation, truth and illusion. And perhaps the most striking message is that good and evil are often intertwined. The things that appear attractive may lead to destruction. The things that seem difficult may lead to growth. Nothing is ever quite as simple as it first appears. Throughout the song, Dio paints a world where human beings constantly stand at moral crossroads, choosing between competing paths without always understanding where those paths will lead. That philosophical depth elevated Heaven and Hell beyond the boundaries of traditional heavy metal. It became a meditation on free will, on responsibility, on the eternal struggle between opposing forces that exists within every human heart. And unlike songs that offer easy answers, Heaven and Hell leaves listeners with a warning. Be careful what you choose to follow, because heaven and hell are not always separated by great distances. Sometimes they are separated by a single decision. Perhaps that's why the song remains so powerful decades later. Not because it tells us what to believe, but because it reminds us that life is filled with choices, and that those choices ultimately shape the world we live in.